Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Please like and subscribe my for awesome contents. Let's start the video. Konko and Kiba struggled to walk towards their club room. Kiba was supporting Konko, who was badly injured. None of them uttered a word. They were too busy processing what just happened. Kiba turned his head towards Konko. If Issei is an angel, why didn't he use his wings? Maybe because he still haven't given up on the idea that we still don't know he's an angel. Kiba nodded at this. Maybe. Kiba kicked open the club room, then stumbled and fell, a passed-out Konko beside him. Rias dropped her cup of tea and ran towards them both. Kiba. Konko. What happened? Rias asked, panic in her voice. Kiba kneeled and bowed deeply. I am sorry for not being strong enough to protect Konko, he said before passing out himself. Rias caught him just in time before he fell to the ground. Eyes. Konko muttered. Rias looked at her. What did you say, Konko? Konko looked at her straight in the eye. Saikan and Dulio-san saved us. They massacred the fallen angels and took the girl you sent us to save with them. Sai also eliminated the 3 tier 7 fallen angels you sent us to kill, brutally and with ease. Konko reported. She was holding her stomach and collapsed on the couch. Rias created a magic circle that carried Kiba and acted as a bed for Kiba, only it's midair. Rias was unnerved by how Konko described the battle. Saikan said he will get them for hurting me. Not even a minute has passed and all 3 of the fallen angels turned to dust. He killed the only male fallen angel that was with them brutally. I kind of doubt that he's an angel if he's like that. Konko told them her point of view in the whole event. Rias gaped. Well, when Akeno and I first felt the duo enter our radar, we almost completely lost our nervous system. The only question is, how strong is Dulio and Sai, really? What is their position in the Brave Saint system? Rias said to Konko. Akeno stumbled upon the room, surprising Konko and Rias. What is happening? Rias asked as her teammates stumbled to the room. Akeno had tears in her eyes. It was terrible, terrible. Akeno kept muttering. She wiped the tears in her eyes. Rias and Konko calmed Akeno down. What happened, Akeno? Akeno looked at her, shivering. I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I was just following Sai and Rainer on their date. And. She started crying again. Dulio-kun is a joker. Rias and Konko gasped. So that's why he eliminated those fallen angels so easily. Akeno sniffed. Rias, it was terrible. I'll show you. Rias nodded. Akeno led Rias to the place where Rainer attempted to kill Sai, and failed. Rias almost puked. Rainer's body was burned, her flesh blackish red. Her hair burned off. Her wings were impaled on the ground and they were burned till it turned to bones. Rias started to doubt herself. What kind of angels ... is this? Sometimes, angels are scarier than devils. Rias read as she traced the writings on Rainer's burned back. So Dulio Hyoudou is Dulio Hyoudou, the Joker of Michael. Interesting. But who is Issei Hyoudou? Rias asked herself. She created a magic circle that cleaned up the mess the Joker made. Rias hugged Akeno. It must have been terrible seeing what happened, especially when she herself is half a fallen angel. Rias sympathized. She hugged the shaking Akeno to the club room. She found Konko sleeping soundly. She locked the club room and closed the lights. She turned on her table lamp and wrote everything she saw. She called her best friend, Suna Saitri, the president of the student council and the heiress of the Saitri clan. Hello, Suna. Suna Saitri was surprised when her best friend called her. Yes, Rias. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you something. Prepare a student council meeting. Suna was interested. Rias never called for a meeting before, so why now? She asked herself. Very well, Rias. A girly scream woke Sai up. Sai quickly stood up and put on a robe. Shoot, Asia. I'm coming. Sai quickly ran to Dulio's room where Asia slept. Sai kicked the door open. Turns out Dulio was the one screaming like a girl. Sai groaned, I thought Asia was getting attacked, that's why I ran all the way to your room. It turns out it's just you. Dulio looked offended, so if I get attacked, you won't hurry up to help me? Dulio asked. Asia was covering her ears with a pillow. Dulio started to cry loudly. Sai sighed. What the hell's wrong with you, Dulio? Dulio just kept crying. Asia, out of annoyance, took a pillow and hit Dulio. Sai covered his mouth to stop himself from laughing. Asia saw what she has done. Oh my, I'm so sorry, Dulio. Sai walked up to Asia. Thank you, young heroine, for saving us from that foul noisy beast. Sai said, acting like a peasant thanking a heroine in a movie he watched with Uriel. Well, that didn't end well. They kept acting like that for almost a week, annoying Michael greatly. Asia stood there, she didn't know what to do. Dulio punched Sai, knocking him out. When Sai woke up they argued about the movie, which made Asia sweat dropped. After they all settled down, they went down to have breakfast. Thank you for taking me in last night, Asia said. Dulio rubbed his head. It was nothing. We couldn't just leave you there to die. Sai yawned and stretched his body. He saw the calendar. He tilted his head, trying to remember something important. Asia poured Sai coffee. Sai smiled and thanked her. Partner, shouldn't you be going to school? Sai's eyes widened. Dulio. It's Monday. We should be getting ready for school. Dulio choked on his bread. Shoot, Michael Sam is going to kill us. They started running around in all directions, multitasking. Michael Sama? Dulio and Sai looked at each other. Sai was going to explain what Asia cut him off. I know, God the Father is dead. Sai's throat went dry. How did you know that, Asia? Asia started to cry. Dulio approached her and enveloped her with a hug. The fallen angels told me that God is dead. At first, I didn't want to believe them, but I eventually believed them when one of them shed tears. They really did love God at some point. She cried, when she pulled away from Dulio and sniffed. There was a wet patch on Dulio's shirt. He didn't seem to mind. Asia, do you want to stay with us? Asia looked at Sai as he offered her to live with them. Asia smiled, wiping away her tears. Yes, I can. I would love that. I don't have anywhere else to go. The church threw me out when I helped a man. I didn't know he was a devil. She started to tear up again. Dulio rubbed her back. It's okay now, Asia. We're your new family now. Sai walked beside Dulio. Hey, Dulio. Should we tell her we're angels? Sai whispered asked. Dulio whispered answered. Yep, we probably should. So we can avoid that revealing drama they always do in the television. Sai nodded at this. The both of them noticed Asia looking at them weirdly. Are you two in a relationship? Sai and Dulio instantly ran for the sink and puked. Asia walking towards them, and rubbing both their backs. Sai and Dulio looked at each other before vomiting simultaneously. Sai turned to Asia. I only consider that ugly monster my brother, besides I like someone. Sai said, smiling while his eyes are closed. His eyes widened in what he just said, but looks like Dulio was too busy muttering, I am not ugly. And Asia was too busy calming the furious Dulio. Sai breathed out in relief. Sai and Dulio decided to be absent today to celebrate the arrival of their new housemate and family member, Asia Argento. Asia was seated on the couch. Dulio and Sai told her they will tell her their secret. They were currently standing in front of her. Sai cleared his throat. Asia, I know you may not believe us, but we're angels. Sai and Dulio closed their eyes, and waited for the what? But it never came. They opened their eyes slowly to see Asia smiling brightly. I knew it. There's no way an ordinary human could wipe out a group of fallen angels and save me. Asia said happily. Sai and Dulio looked at each other, then smiled. Dulio jumped near Asia. They were going to watch a movie when the phone rang. I'll get it, Sai said while smiling. He picked up the phone. Hello? The voice said. Sai answered. Good morning. This is Hyoudou residence. What is it? The voice shouted. Sai. Why are you not attending classes today? Sai suddenly fought the urge to run and hide. It was Baka Michael. Sai shouted, "Dulio! It's Baka Michael-sama." Dulio hid behind Asia's hair, making her blush. Sai rolled his eyes at Dulio, as if that will hide you. Sai thought. Sai, don't you dare ignore me, go to school. No excuses. The line ended. Sai groaned, Dulio, Michael's angry we didn't go to school. He said go to school. This is going to be embarrassing. Dulio groaned and half-heartedly walked upstairs to change into the kawaii uniform. Sai did the same, only faster. After a few minutes, they received packed lunch from Asia. Here's one for you, Ice-kun. And one for you too, Dulio-kun. Asia said cheerfully as she handed out the packed lunch. Dulio hugged Asia goodbye and exited the house. Sai patted Asia's head, don't go outside, okay? Asia replied cheerfully, I promise. Sai smiled at her before exiting and closing the door softly. Dulio created a large golden magic circle on top of the house. Dulio was casting a shield. Hurry up, Dulio. Sai said as he started walking. Dulio's eyes widened. Wait just a second. Dulio finished the chant and a barrier appeared, encasing the whole house. Asia was waving them goodbye. This made them smile and waved back before going their way. Sai and Dulio sighed as the front area of Gua Academy was empty. Finally, we wouldn't have to endure the stares of the students. Dulio said. Sai smiled, nodding in relief. They were on the front door of their classroom when a young man around their age with blonde hair and gray eyes, he didn't wear the blazer of the kawaii uniform. Sai and Dulio Hyoudou, I am Saji Janchiru, the treasurer of the student council. The president of the student council, Suna Saitri requests your attendance in a council meeting. Saji said. Sai shrugged, and started walking but Dulio suddenly pulled Sai, which made Saji look in confusion. Is there a problem, Dulio? Sai asked. Dulio scowled. That young man is a devil. Sai smiled. I know. So? Dulio shook his head in disbelief. Do you actually think he stands a chance against me? And also, Dulio, they just want our attendance. It's not like they're calling for us to kill us. Dulio sighed. Well, yeah, but we can't be sure. Sai shrugged and started walking. Hey Dulio, why you so wary of fallen angels and devils? Sai asked. Dulio glared. Well, they are our enemies to begin with. Dulio whispered screamed. Saki heard their conversation. They were making it obvious and it was loud enough for Saki to hear. What are these two planning to do? Saji looked back at them. Is there a problem, Dulio-san? Dulio stared back at him coldly. What if there is? Sai did a crazy gesture and pointed at Dulio. Saji nodded in understanding. Dulio smirked. Did you see that, Sai? He was scared of me. He didn't know how to answer so he decided to turn around instead. Sai looked at Dulio, his hands in his pocket. Relax, Dulio. What happened to you? You are so tense. Saji, stop walking, stopping in front of a door that was more elegant looking than the other doors in the school. We have arrived. Please behave yourselves. Kiba waved his hand. He was apparently waiting for Saji. Suna was pissed. She arranged the place perfectly. Her best friend called a meeting. When she asked Rias what it was, she didn't tell her, even a little insight. But she did tell her a hint. It's about the two new students. Suna racked her brain, trying to think of a possible reason. Could it be? So though, when she came across the two handsome brothers, she felt intoxicated. But not only intoxicated, she felt something different. Like her nervous system stopped working all of a sudden. Also, she felt unbelievably attracted to the one with blue eyes, Issei Hyoudou. Sai's gentle smile kept appearing in her head. She is acting like a middle schooler. She hit her head while groaning. What the hell is with him? They almost appeared the same yet she felt more attracted to Sai. Rias waved her hand in front of Suna, snapping her out of her trance. She looked at the long table where everyone is seated. They were all staring at her weirdly. Suna blushed in embarrassment. Rias cleared her throat. Anyways, I am going to cast a spell on each of us. We will know the thoughts of each other, we can also communicate with each other mentally. Rias said. The other devils present nodded their heads. A magic circle appeared, as large as the whole room under them. When it faded they can hear each other's thoughts and see what they're thinking. Rias walked towards her chair and sat down. Now, can everyone hear me? Rias mentally asked. Everyone nodded. Suna panicked. Now is not the time to think of fantasies. Suna told herself mentally. Everyone turned to her, wide-eyed. Realization dawned upon her, she blanked her mind immediately. Now suddenly, they saw an image of a naked Issei. He was only wearing boxer shorts and a huge bulge was evident. He was kissing a reluctant Gonko. Everyone's faces turned pink. Especially Gonko. Sorry. She mentally apologized. All of the girls' faces were red, secretly they fantasied about that to happen to them. They were rubbing their knees together involuntarily, biting their lower lips. Issei suddenly entered the room, smiling his knee-weakening smile. Hello. He greeted happily. Issei tilted his head. Before walking to his chair. Let's get serious. Rias mentally said. The other girls nodded. Suna stood up. Dulio, Issei. She began. Explain these. Suna threw a folder which slid near enough for Issei to catch. He gave it to Dulio. Dulio opened it. It was a couple of images of him. Rias used a complicated magic spell to turn memories into images. She used it on Akano last night. Dulio's eyes widened. Suna narrowed her eyes. Looks familiar, Angel? The mood was so tense, Issei saw the pictures and gasped. Don't tell me, you all like Dulio? Everyone including Dulio. Sweat dropped. Rias slammed her hand on the table. Don't play dumb with us, Issei. We know what you are. Issei chuckled. Silly Rias, who wouldn't? Why? As if demons and angels and monsters from different mythologies exist. I am a human, of course. You silly. Rias lost her anger and sputtered. Dulio stood up and opened his wings, surprising everyone and made them stand up, besides Issei who sighed. I tried. Issei revealed his own sets of wings. Suna muttered, they both have 10 wings. Everyone was shaking. Please, we mean no harm. Rias said. Issei smiled. Of course I wouldn't. Dulio pushed him away. He wouldn't. But I would. His wings were flickering black and white. Issei stared in horror. Dulio, don't do. Issei started laughing. To their surprise Dulio held his stomach and laughed. He fell down and broke the table but he just kept laughing. Issei managed to speak between his laughs. Your faces were hilarious. Dulio just laughed even louder and folded his wings, sighed the same. Some of the girls peed themselves. I'm sorry. Issei said, wiping his tears away. Suna scowled. How could you laugh when you did this to a fallen angel? Suna shouted in rage, holding the picture of Rainer's burned body. Issei and Dulio looked at each other before laughing. That's just called magic, my fair lady. Dulio said. He waved his hand. 2 perpendicular magic circles appeared, and when the light faded, Rainer was standing, bound but not hurt. Do you really think angels can do that? Dulio said, pointing at the image. If I did that, then I wouldn't be an angel right now. Suna growled but Issei held out his hand. All right, I'll explain. You see, while I was going with Rainer's plan to kill me, I noticed someone else following me. At first, I thought it was another fallen angel until I sensed the difference in her aura. I said to myself that this aura was familiar. Then I remembered the aura belonged to the devil I met the other day, Akano. And I quickly devised a plan to prank you all. It worked perfectly. Anyways. Dulio began. He waved his hand and all the broken things mended themselves. Everyone settled down. Issei halted Rias who was about to speak. Please raise your hand. We will answer your questions one by one. Rias raised her hands first. Yes, Rias. Rias blushed. I just wanted to thank you for saving Kiba and Gonko. I wouldn't know what I would do without them. Issei smiled at her. It's nothing. I just can't live with the thought that I had the chance to save someone and I didn't, so I saved them. Suna raised her hand. Issei, since you and Dulio have 10 wings, does that mean you're the so-called trump cards of heaven? Issei and the back to normal Dulio, who was eating the different flavors of cupcake the student council had blushed. They call us that. Really? We're not that strong. The devils looked unconvinced. Rias raised her hand. You're the Joker of who exactly, Issei? Issei smiled dreamily. I'm the Joker of Gabriel. Dulio here is the Joker of Michael. The devils nodded in amazement. The questioning went for about 2 hours long. By then, the devils knew the whole story, from the island with ghouls to why they're in school. They laughed at Issei and Dulio's story. Issei cleared his throat. Devils, please know that Dulio and I wish you all nothing but peace. Although we can't force you to accept it, we do hope you will accept our offer of peace. Issei said. Suna and Rias' eyes widened. Of course we do, Issei. Dulio looked sad but whispered something to Issei. Issei nodded, also a gloomy expression on his face which piqued the interest of the devils. Why so gloomy, Issei-san? Kiba asked. Issei turned to Rias. Rias, you told me you owed me one. I would like to use my debt. Rias nodded. What is it, Issei? Issei sighed. Please take Asia with you. She is an ex-nun, therefore she had to rely to the fallen angels for protection. We took her in temporarily, but no matter how powerful we are, we can't always protect her cause we, of course, have our mission that are given to us by Michael-sama. Rias nodded at this. Of course, Issei. Dulio created a magic circle right above him. Out fell a screaming Asia. Dulio caught her, their faces mere inches from each other. A minute has passed and Issei cleared his throat to break the two who were intently staring at each other, the devils intently watching how the events are unfolding. Dulio explained to Asia what is going to happen, though a bit sad. Asia agreed. And soon, Rias got Asia as her bishop. Issei patted Dulio's shoulder. Don't worry. At least Asia has her needed protection. They bade Asia farewell, promising to visit her tomorrow. Issei walked towards the blushing Konko. Are you fine now? Konko nodded, thanks to you. Issei smiled at her before saying goodbye to the devils. Dulio did the same, clearing his name. It was all part of the prank. I really don't hate devils, really. Although, fallen angels are things I really do despise. The devils shivered at Dulio's remark. The belligerence in Dulio's voice sent shivers down the devil's back. Even Asia was scared. So I hit the back of Dulio's head. Oi! You're scaring Asia and the devils. Issei scolded as Dulio complained while rubbing the back of his head. It was sunset. They were the only ones left in school. Dulio and Issei waved at them before going home. Issei was woken up by someone who pushed him out of bed. Issei rubbed his head. Oh. What the? Issei grumbled as a properly dressed Dulio was standing, holding his bed sheet. Geez, Dulio. Get a hold of yourself, we will visit Asia later. But it's too early. Issei groaned. Dulio just kept smiling at him. Issei closed his eyes, trying to imagine that Dulio wasn't in his room and wasn't staring at him intently while smiling creepily. In the end, Issei sighed and exited his room. I'll get ready. Geez, you miss Asia too much. I told you we will visit them later, but no. You want it now, do you? Issei complained. Dulio just kept smiling at him creepily. Issei sighed. Dulio, don't make me punch you. Remove that ugly grin off your ugly face. That seemed to get Dulio to stop his grinning. Dulio's eyes widened, and he protested. What? Shoot, how to fix my look? Dulio asked frantically. Issei turned to him while brushing and fist-pumped. He spitted the toothpaste then grinned. Why are you extra vain, huh? Trying to impress Asia? Issei asked, a smug grin on his face. He didn't wait for Dulio to reply and gargled the mouthwash. Dulio punched Issei on the shoulder. Haha, very funny. But seriously, do I look fine? He said, motioning on his clothes. Issei decided to mess with his head. Well, you look like your normal self. Issei said in a pretend unsure voice. He quickly left the bathroom and Dulio Issei turned around for a bit to see Dulio looking at the mirror and fixing his hair. "Hey, Dulio," Issei called out, "if you get vain even more, you might fall." Dulio gulped. They decided not to use the bikes today and walked. Since Dulio woke Issei up early, they won't be late for school even if they walked. Issei smiled at the nervous Dulio. "Now you know how I feel." Dulio looked at him. "With Gabriel sama?" Dulio asked. Issei blushed a little at the mention of Gabriel's name. "Well, yeah," he said, reluctant in sharing this with Dulio. Issei had a question to ask. "Hey, Dulio. Is it okay if an angel falls in love?" Dulio stopped walking. "Even I don't know. I guess, no." Dulio replied dejectedly, "But I am not sure, but I heard Michael-sama is working on something that'll allow angels to fall in love and not fall." Issei's mood escalated. They started walking, happier than before. Dulio took out a cupcake out of his pocket. His pockets have a special feature in them. Whatever food Dulio puts in there, it will never get mashed, whatever Dulio does. Dulio happily started devouring the Black Forest cupcake. "It's so good not pretending anymore. You have no idea how hard it is to not eat and be happy when outside with devils. Why did I have to be the one to pretend to be an devil-hating angel?" Dulio asked. Issei grinned at his friend. "Well, you never said you didn't want to, so I assigned you to be the one to pretend." Dulio and Issei noticed that the students were just exiting from their houses and joining their friend walking towards school. When they arrived at school, Issei told Dulio to go to the classroom. He entered the male restroom. He heard someone follow him. He zipped his pants and turned around to see a group of boys about his age. The other three were slightly older than him. There were 5 in total. The one with the glasses was in the same class as Issei, and also the bald guy. Issei noticed their malicious intentions by taking a look at their aura. Another perk of being an angel. The one with glasses who Issei heard was Motihama, glared at him. "Hey, Casanova," he said as he slammed his hand on the door and locked it. Issei smiled at them. "What is it?" To his surprise, the bald guy, Matsuda, swung a punch. Issei blocked it easily and sidestepped, sending Matsuda stumbling towards the toilet. "Why are you attacking me?" Issei asked. Obviously he knew why. He was attracting the eyes of the girls in the academy. Motihama shook in rage. "You and your brother took all the girls for yourselves. We'll teach you a lesson. After you, we will teach your brother a lesson too." Issei panicked at this. "I've got to stop them before they decide to attack Dulio. They'll be humiliated for sure." He heard the 2 heavenly dragons laugh inside his mind. Matsuda threw another punch. Issei kicked Matsuda the weakest he could. Matsuda flew towards another toilet, breaking the toilet. "Oops." Issei thought, "I need to end this quick." Issei decided to scare them. A hunk, probably 3rd year, a year higher than Issei and a lot more muscular than Issei, pushed Issei to the wall. Issei slammed his palm the weakest he could to the 3rd year. The 3rd year got smashed by the force of Issei's palm towards the ground. Cracks appeared on the floor where the 3rd year was crying in pain. Motihama and the other 2 boys at his back stepped backwards. Issei smiled coldly at them. "Please forgive me. But I merely defended myself." Issei walked toward the restroom's door and unlocked it. He walked off to the hallway when he noticed the students pointed at his back frantically. He knew instantly that a knife was thrown. He felt it. Issei smiled and turned around, too slow. He thought before dropping his bag and twisting his body a full 360, catching the knife in the process. He threw back the knife, impaling in 2 inches away from another 3rd year who threw it. The 3rd year peed himself and slowly sat down, his upper body frozen in fear. His ear was grazed slightly. The students who saw it stared in awe at Issei, who was smiling darkly, his other hand in his pocket and the other hand he used to throw the knife with, holding his bag. "Don't mess with me. Next time that will completely cut your ear off." Issei threatened. He felt weird as he really didn't mean what he said. But it's for the better. If Dulio was the one they attacked, I don't even want to know. Issei cringed at what he saw in his mind. Dulio's eyes were wide. His cupcake was accidentally dropped when he fought the students. Issei nodded at himself, definitely better than Dulio's cupcake dropping. He would destroy this whole school and become a fallen angel because of a cupcake. Sai thought and shook his head in how Dulio can turn to a fallen angel because of a freaking cupcake. Sai heard the two heavenly dragons, his partners, chuckle. That definitely is possible to happen with Dulio, no? Albion chuckled in Sai's mind. Sai smiled, definitely. He entered the class to see Dulio eating a cupcake with a different flavor, red velvet this time. Sai, what took you so long? Dulio asked as he munched on the fancy-looking cupcake. Well, I just took care of something unimportant. Sai replied as he sent a smile towards the two boys entering. Matsuda and Morihama gulped and walked quickly towards their seats. They avoided Sai's gaze the whole class, which made the students why they usually will glare at Sai. The students started to gossip about what happened. Sai also heard them talk about how he countered and returned the knife throw. When the bell rang, Sai and Dulio started putting their things in their bag. Sai noticed that the whole class was remaining seated and silent, which was odd, because usually they were rushing for the exit. Sai swiftly acted on impulse and caught the arm of someone who was attempting to stab him, then sidestepped to dodge someone who thrusted at him with a dot pencil, a sharpened one. It was the members of the kendo class, Katase and Murayama. The whole class went silent and Dulio stared at Murayama, carefree expression on his face. He shrugged and started packing again. Sai tilted his head to look at Murayama questioningly. Murayama blushed at the innocent but ridiculously intoxicating look Sai was giving her. She was going to explain when the whole class wowed at Sai's reflexes. A guy approached Sai. Master, please teach me. And another one, wow, that was amazing, you weren't looking. How did you do that? Sai was drowning as the students started to trap him. Luckily, Dulio, who was getting annoyed at being delayed in getting to see Asia's face, caught hold of his arm and pulled him with great strength that made the whole crowd stumble and fall. Oh. Wait, Dulio. Relax, I was coming to you. You want to see us? Dulio kept pulling him. He was sliding on the floor as Dulio kept running towards the occult research club room. The students kept glancing at the two all the way until Dulio tossed the screaming Sai down the stairs. Dulio smiled as he listened to the complaining Sai while walking towards the occult research club room. I'm almost there, Asia. Dulio said, daydreaming, then blushed. He looked at his side to see Sai looking back like he was some kind of an alien monster. What? Dulio said as he lowered his gaze quickly. Sai laughed. You were blushing. Were you thinking of Asia-kun? Sai teased. Dulio waved him off, trying his hardest not to smile. Sai and Dulio looked at each other before they started to laugh. Sai was about to say something when a shouting was heard. I'm not your wife yet. Go away. Sai turned to Dulio. Wasn't that Rias? Sai quickly ran to the door and pressed his ears to hear better. Dulio did the same. Hee, you actually think you have a chance in winning? The voice filled with malice. Just give up already. You'll be my wife and your peerage will be part of my harem besides Kiba. Footsteps were heard. Eep. A female voice exclaimed. Dulio and Sai's eyes widened. That voice was Asia's. You shouldn't do that. Rias tried to stop, but Dulio, furious, put it on an expressionless face, gave his bag to Sai, and opened the door, calmly. The man with blonde hair and as tall as Sai, an inch shorter than Dulio, was groping Asia, who was helpless. The occult research club members gulped. Sai was leaning on the wall, his right hand holding his and Dulio's bags, smiling darkly. Sai shook his head. You messed up real bad. Sai thought and looked at the marching Dulio. Messed up real bad indeed. Rias held up her hands. Riser, please let Asia go. She said slowly and pleadingly. Please don't fight, you won't stand a chance. Rias thought. She was tempted to let Riser provoke the angels and die, but that would start another great war, so she half-heartedly pleaded Riser to stop his harassment. Riser smiled. What? Who the hell are these two? Don't tell me, you expect me to be afraid of them? Riser exclaimed, his hands kneading Asia's ass. She had tears in the corner of her eyes. Dulio stopped in front of Riser. Riser looked at Dulio with a fearless expression. Sai smiled. Yup, he's dead. To the surprise of the Rias's peerage and Razor's also, Dulio punched Riser's cheek. The punch was so strong that it created a sudden wind that flew to all directions. The girls brought down their arms to prevent their skirts from going up. The wind broke the window pane and scattered the furniture. Rias and the other devils covered their faces, afraid of this sudden torrent of wind that appeared while holding down their skirts. Riser roughly hit the floor, very hard. The force of Riser's impact created a crack throughout the whole room. Riser sputtered out blood, his eyes wide in shock. He was staring at the ceiling, having a hard time processing what happened. Sai noticed the twins on Riser's peerage jump front flipped, attempting to kick Dulio away, but Sai twisted then flung both his and Dulio's bags towards the twins. Sai and Dulio's bags each collided with the throat of each twin, sending them flying to the rest of the peerage who caught them. Some fell but the others in the back managed to catch them and prevent themselves from falling. Dulio was hugging Asia protectively. Sai and Dulio had a silent agreement not to open their wings. Sai walked calmly towards Rias and the others who were staring in shock with how Dulio easily subdued the mighty phoenix. Sai took Asia away from the furious Dulio. Asia hugged Sai's chest tightly. Dulio was breathing deeply, staring angrily at the shocked Razor. Razor was having a hard time processing what just happened and decided to stare on the ceiling. The twins held their throats and were coughing, the others rubbing their backs and staring at the angel duo angrily. You dare touch Master Riser? A woman with a large breast and seductive clothing exclaimed. She was shaking in anger. Outrageous savages. Someone from the peerage shouted in anger. They were throwing all kinds of insult, but Dulio didn't remove his burning gaze to the heavily breathing Razor, who was wide-eyed and staring emptily at the ceiling. Sai patted the shaking Asia's back. It's okay now, Asia. Rias and Konko approached their fellow club member and teammate and took her away from Sai. Kiba quickly took out his handkerchief and wiped Asia's tears. Akano was too busy frozen in fear and staring at Dulio. Rias hugged Akano, knowing why she was frozen, and told her to sit down, which she did. Konko looked at Sai, who turned towards Razor's peerage. Savages? If we're savages then you're all shameless sluts. Sai retorted back. The devils stared at him in surprise. Even Akano snapped out of her trance and looked at Sai. They were surprised of the belligerence in Sai's voice. They were surprised to see a scowl on Sai's face. They were used to the kind, warm, and innocent smile that's always plastered on Sai's face. Dulio turned his back away from the peerage and the wide-eyed Riser, who was just regaining himself, shaking his head mildly, while holding his jaw. His peerage scattered around him, asking him if he's alright. Sai gestured for the occult research club to exit the badly damaged room. Sai and Dulio stood still and watched Rias's peerage hastily exit the room. Sai walked towards Razor's peerage and bent down, his face nearing the other girls, which made them turn pink despite what happened earlier. Sai looked like he was about to kiss one of the twins when he stood up straight. His hands were holding the bags he threw. He smiled kindly and apologized for his brutality, then left the room. Dulio was left, standing and staring at them coldly before exiting the room and slammed the door shut. Razor pushed away his concerned girls in anger and frustration. I'll get them for this. Rias and her peerage were following Sai and Dulio. Sai insisted that they stay with the angels for a while since Dulio destroyed their club room. The peerage was still in shock. For Sai's smile to turn into a scowl surprised them greatly. Even when Sai slayed the 3 high-level fallen angels, he had a smile, albeit a dark and cold one, but nonetheless a smile. Asia was asleep, being carried by a blushing Dulio. He apologized to Rias and her peerage for his sudden outburst. Rias really didn't mind. Riser was rudely and publicly groping her bishop. She was actually very delighted at what Dulio did, pummeling Riser to the ground with one punch. The devils were silently walking behind the 2 angels, staring at the 2, wondering just how powerful these angels really are. With one punch, Riser was down the ground. The immortal phoenix needed about a minute before he snapped out of his trance. He suddenly lost his will and decided to stare at the ceiling like a fool. Rias wanted that to happen again, to humiliate that smug, depraved, imbecile. Rias snapped out of her mulling when Issei and Dulio stopped in front of a fairly ordinary house. Issei turned to them with a smile. "I know it isn't much, but, in here, this is what we consider our home," Issei said before proceeding to walk towards the front door and unlocking it with the key which he took out from his pocket. Issei opened the lights. It was like the outside. It was ordinary. But the devils were delighted. They were tired of sophisticated houses, result of being a high-class devil, and were happy to see something normal. They asked permission to roam the house, which Issei granted with a kind smile which they grew to like. Issei removed his leather shoes before heading to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Dulio was left standing there, carrying the snoring Asia. He stared at the beautiful maiden on his arms before looking away and blushing. Issei cleared his throat, which made Dulio jump, Asia opening her eyes before closing them, again. Dulio looked at Asia before turning to Issei, who was wearing an apron and a chef's hat, and scowled. "Hey. Not funny. Asia will wake up." Dulio whispered, "Scream." Issei just kept smiling at him. "Well, sorry. I didn't want my brother to be stuck staring at his princess forever." Dulio's face turned pink. Issei grinned at this before waving his hand and walked towards the kitchen. Dulio shook his head before walking upstairs. Issei prepared utensils while he was waiting for the soup to be done. Rias silently made her way towards the pot and took a sip. The taste made her gag. Issei turned around. "How does it taste?" Issei asked. Rias felt like it broke her heart, but she needed to tell the truth. "Horrible!" Rias exclaimed before running to the bathroom and puke. Issei took a peek on the living room to see Konko, Akano, and Kiba watching TV. Issei felt a warm feeling. He was happy that Dulio and the two annoying heavenly dragons weren't the only ones that were with him tonight. Rias had frown on her face. "Issei. What the hell are you cooking?" "Akano," she called out. Akano turned her gaze from the TV to Rias. "Issei is cooking a terrible dish. Do you mind cooking the dinner instead?" Akano looked at the frowning Issei and giggled. "Not at all." Akano made her way to the stove and smelled the dish. Akano had a questioning look on her face. "I know, it smells very good, but have a taste." Akano dipped her finger and licked it. Akano's eyes widened before running to Issei and puking. Akano gripped Issei's arm strongly. "I'm sorry, Issei-kun," she managed to mutter, before vomiting once again. Rias took a step back and looked at Issei's face. He was unfazed with the vomit on neck and apron, and instead rubbed Akano's back. "Sorry. I am really bad at cooking. Somehow, I understood how Sister Griselda's meal smells so pleasant, but I never learned the taste." Rias shook her head before leaving the two and sitting beside Konko. Issei patted Akano's head. Akano smiled before pulling away and turning her back, which confused Issei. He decided not to make such a big deal about it and decided to take a bath instead. Akano remembered what Dulio said last night, fallen angels. Akano muttered sadly before fixing Issei's dish. "It would be a waste if we were going to throw all that away," she thought. After a while, Akano called on the others. She was done cooking the dish. Rias cautiously took a taste. Her eyes widened. "Wow! This tastes great, Akano." Akano smiled. "You fufu, thank you, Rias." She sat down. She felt the urge to look to the side and saw Issei, with only a towel wrapped around his waist, walking around holding another towel to wipe his wet hair. His six-pack abs were glistening because of the water and his biceps were attracting Akano's eyes like crazy. Rias looked at the jaw-dropped Akano. "What is it, Akan?" Rias asked and turned around. She herself jaw-dropped. The mind of Rias screamed at her to lunge at Issei, but she managed to stop herself. Konko dropped the tempura she took when she saw Issei. The girl's eyes were glued at Issei, who was busy wiping his hair. Kiba was the only one with closed eyes and a smile, gnawing on the tempura. Issei turned his head to see the girls, and he smiled. unaware of the effect he was giving the girls. Damn it. He's making me wet, and he doesn't even know what he's doing. Rias thought bitterly, rubbing her thighs. Sai smiled at the sight of food. That smells great, Akeno-san. Akeno resisted the urge to remove the towel and kiss the angel in front of her. She was shaking and forced her head to turn towards the food. Somehow, she felt that she was doing something wrong. Konko bitterly lowered her gaze and nibbled on the tempura. Kiba smiled at this. Sai-san, if only you know what you are putting them through. Kiba thought while smiling, before drinking the tea Akeno made along with the meal. Sai sat beside Akeno, making her want to throw herself to him. Dulio, still in uniform, was walking towards them with a frown. I warn you all. Sai's cooking smells really good but tastes like Irresistible. Sai glared at him. Hey. The devils giggled. It's okay, Dulio. It was Akeno who cooked the food. Dulio sighed in relief then looked at the happily eating Sai. You should wear clothes, Sai. Girls won't be able to resist you if you remain like that, he said while motioning on Sai's look. Sai tilted his head in confusion as the girls blushed and Kiba and Dulio to laugh. Sai shrugged and started walking to get changed. Dulio took the sit next to Sai. Sorry about that. I know at least a little bit about those kinds of things since I grew up being human. Sai grew up as an angel and Michael-sama watched Uriel-sama to make ure Uriel-sama wouldn't teach those things to him. He said while nodding his head in approval with how the tempura tastes. Sai arrived with a white shirt and red shorts. He sat down and started devouring his rice quickly, to the amazement of the devils and to the surprise of Dulio. Hey. I wasn't set yet. Dulio complained, quickly taking his bowl of rice and devoured it quicker than Sai. Sai always cooked bad food. It's a rare occurrence for good food to appear on the table. Dulio quickly explained before filling his bowl with more rice. The devils smiled at the two angels, somehow having a warm feeling to see the two angels be delighted at the food. After they finished eating, they all gathered around a table in the living room. Asia arrived just before Sai and Dulio were about to eat the remaining rice. Sai and Dulio reluctantly gave the rice and remaining tempura to Asia, which made the devils smile. After Asia finished her food, they went to the living room to discuss what happened. Sai and Dulio were sipping on their bowls of miso soup while listening. You see, Riser is my fiancé. Against my will, I challenged him to a rating game. If he wins, I will marry him, but when I win, the engagement is broken. He agreed on the deal, but then he insulted me, asking me if I even stand a chance. Her voice broke. He then started to grope Asia. Luckily, you two arrived. She smiled. Sai sipped his soup. Well, do you think you can beat him? He asked, before taking another sip. Rias looked down. The devils were emitting a miserable mood. No. Rias answered, keeping her head down. Dulio looked at Sai, nodding. Rias? Will you agree if we become temporary members of your peerage? Rias suddenly looked up, wide-eyed. The devils were also surprised. I would agree, but... She looks down. She was about to continue but Sai beat her to it. Don't worry, we will suppress our powers to 1/8. Sai and Dulio's eyes glowed golden. The devils felt the knee-weakening feeling to fade. Sai smiled at Rias. Done. He said, cheerily. We would take 4 pawns each. Dulio said. Rias made them her pawn. She had tears in her eyes. Thank you. She said sincerely. The two angels smiled at her, just here to help a friend. Sai said before going upstairs, Dulio right behind him, my room will be the girls' temporary room. Dulio's room will be where Kiba and I will reside for now. Sai said. Kiba stopped Dulio and, Sai-san, if you two are currently have only 1/8 of your powers, before you suppressed it a while ago, how much power were you using all along? Kiba asked. Dulio and Sai stopped and looked behind. The devils were staring at them, waiting for the answer. We were using 2/8 or 1/4 of our powers all along. The devils were surprised. So strong. Konko muttered. The two angels blushed. Hey! Stop it! We're not that strong. Sai said shyly. The devils rolled their eyes. Also, please stop with the honorifics. We're in the same peerage now. Although, I will call Rias Buku. Sai smiled, which made Rias red. Sai continued to walk upstairs, Dulio following. He was happily munching on another cupcake. Rias's peerage just returned from their training. Rias took them to an isolated area and Sai and Dulio trained them. They arrived at Sai and Dulio's home. The skies were dark, the devils preparing to leave. The clubroom was fixed by Riser, since he technically was the one who destroyed it with his body. Dulio was talking with Asia, having a hard time saying goodbye. The devils are nervous, the fight against Riser is tomorrow. The devils waved at angels goodbye as they made their way to the occult research club room. Sai and Dulio waited for the devils to be out of sight before locking their door and going upstairs. Sai was about to enter his door but stopped. Dulio, we're coming right? He asked, doubt in his voice. Dulio stopped dead in his tracks, a dark expression on his face. We'll try. Sai gripped the doorknob before entering. Dulio sadly looked at the doorknob. It was Rias and the devils arrived with gloomy and disappointed expressions on their faces. Riser and Rias faced each other. Riser grinned at her. Where are those bastards? He asked. Rias lowered her gaze, preventing herself from crying. Rias and her peerage were engulfed by a large red circle. Riser and his peerage was engulfed by an orange one. It's starting, Akano said to her friends who had questioning looks. They arrived at the club room. Rias walked to her table. They based the whole arena from Gua Academy. She said. Rias Onizama? Where are they? Asia asked. Tears fell out of Rias's eyes. They abandoned us. Asia hugged Rias. Asia was preventing herself from crying also. Akano lowered her gaze, but, we should still fight. Just because Sai and Dulio aren't here, doesn't mean we don't stand a chance. It means exactly that. Rias cut Akano off. But then she smiled, but you're right. If we're going down, might as well go down fighting. No. The devils smiled bitterly. Akano, Konko, Kiba. Go set traps, we must have countermeasures just in case Riser decides to do a frontal assault. The three nodded at this and quickly ran off to do what Rias told them to do. Not long after, the three returned. Rias told them their next move, Konko, Kiba. Start eliminating Riser's foot soldier. Head to the gymnasium. Kiba and Konko nodded at this and left the room. Asia, stay with me. Akano, you defend the front, and also deal the final blow to anyone that Konko and Kiba are fighting. Akano nodded and flew off. Asia looked out the window. Where are those two? Asia asked herself. Unbeknownst to them, the angels were hiding in the forest. We'll let them handle what they can handle. When they reach their limits, we eliminate the remaining devils. Dulio said. Sai nodded at this, reluctant. But aren't we downing their morale by doing this? Dulio remained silent. Sai laughed. You actually thought this plan was going to be a great one? Sai asked, hilarious. Dulio glared. Hey. I panicked, okay? Dulio was fidgeting. Sai's smile grew even wider. You wanted a cool entrance, didn't you? Dulio screamed. No. No. Not at all. Dulio exclaimed. Sai cracked up. I swear, Dulio. Keep doing those things and you will surely fall. Dulio lowered his head. I'm sorry. Konko and Kiba encountered risers, Rook, Zulan, and pawns, Myra, Eel and now. Dulio peeked inside the gymnasium. They're doing good so far. Dulio said. He neared the flying Akano. The two ducked as Akano summoned lightning that made the gymnasium explode. The two saw Konko and Kiba run out of the gymnasium and approach Akano. Riser's Rook and 3 of his pawns have retired. A voice said. Sai and Dulio smiled at each other. They sensed something stronger compared to the 3 devils who have retired. Sai saw Razor's queen, Yubi Luna, sneakily targeting Konko. Issei quickly made his way stealthily, avoiding alarming both his teammates and enemies. Julia was watching silently. Ubeluna was about to cast her bomb when, to her surprise, a hand covered her mouth and a cutlass appeared between her chests. Risers, Queen has retired. Akano, Kiba, and Konko's eyes grew wide. Who the hell? Kiba asked, looking around. Luckily, before the three can investigate further, 3 other servants of Riser appeared. Issei made his way and entered the bush where Julio was. Julio was about to say something when Akano and Konko were engulfed by fire, to the surprise of the 2 angels. Rias's Queen and Rook have retired. Kiba dodged Riser's fire. The twins attacked Kiba from behind, but out of nowhere, a red demonic massive energy hit the attacking twins. 2 of Riser's pawns have retired. Rias was marching towards them, Asia following her. Julio was filled with warmth when he gazed upon Asia. Issei elbowed him. Say, isn't that your princess walking, Julio? Julio glared at him. I'll give you a hard time when you meet with her. Issei's eyes widened. What? With Gabriel? Julio chuckled. How the hell did Gabriel enter the conversation, huh? Riser looked around. Why the hell do I sense dragons? Julio and Issei tensed up. You didn't tell that you had us, didn't you? That's why you were avoiding using your powers, no? Oh hey, Albion. How was your 3-day hibernation? Hello, Julio. It was great. I want to hibernate again. Issei glared at Julio. Really? Now is not the time to chat. Julio chuckled. Riser began to look around. Dragons. He began. His servants and Rias looked at him weirdly. There are dragons watching us. Issei panicked. Issei, you do know you have to strike down that man if you want to prevent the devils watching this game to know that you're the host of the 2 heavenly dragons. I know that, Albion. Rias asked Riser, how can you know that there are dragons watching us? Riser grinned at her. He took out a necklace. With this, my sister wasn't able to join us tonight, so she gave me this instead. If I wear this, I will be able to sense anything within 15 miles. Isn't my sister sweet? Riser asked. Issei took this opportunity and released the blinding light from Ascalon. All the devils covered their eyes. Riser, surprised, accidentally dropped the necklace. Issei caught it. He crushed the necklace with his hands and dropped right below Riser. He quickly retreated and stopped the sword from emitting the light. What was that? Rias said, looking around. Riser looked at the broken necklace. Damn it. Anyway, let's send this Rias. Riser was going to give the command, when all his servants suddenly got impaled by metal that rose from the ground. All of Riser's servants have retired. Riser's eyes widened. What? He looked at Rias for an answer, but she was just as surprised. She looked at Kiba, who was smiling. Why are you smiling, Kiba? Rias asked. I know the man who can do that. Riser felt the air extinguish his flame wings and force his devil ones to unbalance. He fell down the ground. Asia tugged both Kiba and Rias. They turned around to see Issei and Julio standing behind them, smiling. Hey, it was Julio's plan to make you all cry. Issei said while grinning. Julio lowered his head. I said I'm sorry. He shouted at Issei. Rias slowly smiled, tears in her eyes. She ran towards both Issei and Julio and peeled them both to a hug. I thought you abandoned us. Issei smiled. You were doing fine on your own. Issei complimented. Rias looked at him. It's because of you, eyes. Julio cried and pointed at himself. How about me? Flame came rushing towards them. Kiba, Asia, and Rias gulped. Issei sprinted towards the incoming flame. He grinned at Julio, who nodded in understanding. Julio walked, aligning himself from the running Issei. He held his palm. He waved it downwards. The flame split in the middle, making way for the running Issei. On the other side, Riser was grinning smugly. Finally, those 2 bastards showed up. I'll burn those 2. He said to himself before chuckling. But to his surprise, Issei appeared in front of him and Issei covered his palm, stopping the flow of fire. Issei grinned at him. The grin sent shivers down Riser's back. He backflipped, putting distance between Issei and him. But as soon as Riser's feet hit the ground on his last flip, Issei was in front of him. He got sliced by Issei across the chest. He staggered backwards and fell. "This is all you've got? I wasn't even serious." "Ridiculous. You're pathetic," Issei said, before smiling. "Just kidding. Just surrender, I can't kill you." Riser glared. "I won't surrender." Issei stabbed him, smiling darkly. "Okay, then." Issei twisted the sword, making Riser scream in pain. "Partner, what are you doing?" "Issei, stop now. You're going to fall." Issei's eyes turned black before he was sent flying to the tree. Dulio kicked him. "Issei, what are you doing?" Issei closed his eyes and opened them. They returned to his normal blue eyes. Riser has retired from the battlefield. Rias and her peerage wins. Issei smiled before passing out. In Issei's mindscape. "Dreg, this is very bad." Dreg sighed. "I know. That was a sign. Issei's enemies are awakening," Albion said frantically. Dreg sighed. "I know. We need to train Issei double time." "It begins, huh?" Issei was sleeping on Rias's bed in the underworld. Dulio was sitting beside him, dressed in a white suit. They are supposed to attend a ball celebrating Rias's win. "Dulio, you need to go to heaven. Don't tell Issei what he has done." Albion altered Riser's memory. He also won't remember what Issei did. Albion also emitted an invisible light that can alter what everyone is seeing in a certain hour. Dulio smiled bitterly. "We will, but we have to attend this ball first." Issei's eyes opened, which made Dulio jump. Issei glared at him. "Why did you kick me?"